I am currently deployed to a place in a combat zone overseas that has been in the news in the past year. I can't go into much more detail in this post due to operational security concerns, so I apologize if some things seem vague. My job here is usually a truck commander, TC, for one of our gun truck's elements. We pull security watching the tree line for movement and potential attacks during the hours of darkness. We have a few different tools that help us do this, such as a thermal monocular and night vision goggles. The other night we were posted up as usual approximately 200 meters from the tree line. I stepped out of my truck to perform one of 360-degree sweeps with a thermal optic that I perform every 10 minutes or so. On this sweep I got a thermal hit in the tree line, which isn't completely out of the ordinary due to the vast amount of wildlife in our area. However, due to the built by the lowest bidder syndrome the military has, it is extremely difficult to make out exact shapes at that distance. I observed it for a while to see if it would move, which makes it a lot easier to distinguish whether or not it is moving on 4 legs or 2. Unfortunately, for about 3 minutes it stayed completely motionless. So I asked my gunner while handing him up the thermals if he could try to make PID, positive identification, on the hotspot in the wood line. He looked through it and asked, "What hotspot?" I grabbed the thermals back and sure enough it was gone. Keep in mind seeing random hotspots is not out of the ordinary, but they don't just disappear like that without making any noise. I reported it to our TOC, Tactical Operations Center, and carried on with the night. About 2 hours later I stepped out of my truck to conduct another 360 scan and there crouching just on the other side of our triple stack of 3 spools of razor wire, was what looked like the thermal signature of some sort of bipedal primate. Again, that's not completely abnormal due to the area we are in. What was weird is that it was alone. Primates here usually hang out in groups no less than 5 at any time and you never see them at night. I watched it for movement for a few minutes through my thermal. However, when I took it away from my eye to step further from my truck to get a better angle, it disappeared without a sound. That means it had to make it over 100 meters, at the shortest distance, to the tree line over an open field without making any noise. I quickly told my gunner to scan for movement with his night vision while I called it up. Our QRF, Quick Reaction Force, was dispatched to conduct a perimeter sweep that resulted in nothing. Another hour or so later, I remember sitting there in my truck when all of a sudden the forest went quiet. The birds and insects just completely stopped as if someone flipped a switch. Something similar to this happens sometimes due to large predators moving around or a handful of other reason, but never that abruptly or completely. Then a few seconds later my gunner gasps and in a high whisper says, "Jesus Christ, is that a fucking kid?" He threw the thermals down and there 20 meters from my truck was the unmistakable thermal signature of a child crouching in the tall grass staring straight at me completely motionless. I threw the thermals back to my gunner so he could keep eyes on the kid while I called up to our TOC that someone had breached the wire and to dispatch our QRF. Then all I hear from my gunner was, "Holy FK, where did it go?" Again, in the few seconds of no one looking at whatever it was, it had completed vanished. The QRF was dispatched and conducted another perimeter sweep. They found no holes in our wire and absolutely no trace of a kid. I keep trying to justify what we saw. Whatever it was had to have made it over 200 meters of open field and a wall of razor wire without making a sound or being picked up on either night vision or thermals. The jungle is home to a lot of crazy things, but up to this point that is the only experience that I have that I can't explain. So I was at a local place for a family friend's son's birthday. I was 7 at the time and because it was my first time there I went exploring but something weird happened. I found a dark secluded section with those distorted mirrors. The second I found it I got bad vibes and started thinking of nightmares I had 5 years ago all of a sudden. When I left I tried to find it again but just couldn't find it anywhere. The weirdest part is my friends who went the often and knew the place very well said that there was never a area with those mirrors. Scary. Supernatural things happen all the time to me. From sounds to smells, to seeing things. Sometimes others see/hear/whatever as well, and other times, it's just me. This has happened since my earliest memories, so for the most part I can remain calm even when I'm weirded out. In the vein of here we go again, dang it, I don't react typically or aggressively. To date, one of the most provable instances of this happening involved another person. Skinwalkers call your name from, usually, the woods, and imitate people you know, even if you don't see them at first. They do this to lure you to them to consume you. This is important to remember. My friend and I lived in an area where legends of creepy happenings abound, where truth and legend blur. So, it's not unusual to hear about someone going missing or their body being found with no explanation. The police chalk it up to gang violence. The residents know better. My friend and I both would hear our names being called occasionally, and this happened over the course of the entire time we were together in the same building and after she moved. I don't remember the first time she and I heard them, but I remember this one instance. One day, we were walking down the road to go swimming. We caught a creepy ride back, but that's another story. We walked across a harvested cornfield, where there were just the little nubblies of stalks sticking out of the ground. Then, we heard our names being called, one after the other, and only the names with no answer when we called back to them. The names were called in a voice that sounded like my boyfriend at the time, except distorted somehow, like it was super far away and like it was urgent. She and I both turned around to look across the field, and he wasn't there. He couldn't have gone anywhere else but maybe laying down in the field, but we would have still seen him due to the only cover being 6-inch or so nubs. As big as the field was, there was no way he could have hidden anywhere successfully, without doing the equivalent of a cartoon ostrich. From how close the voice sounded, I could have brushed it off as imagination or mishearing some other sound as a voice, except that my friend heard it too. In the years I knew her, we would both hear each other's name being called, so this thing that was targeting us knew we were together, and wasn't shy. Sometimes she'd mention it to make sure she wasn't hearing things, other times I would. Sometimes there'd be knocks on the door with nobody there, and we wouldn't go outside or open the door. We don't talk no, but I know she's still alive, thankfully. This wasn't the most creepy thing that happened, but it is definitely one of the most memorable. Remember, kids, if your friend that you can't make visual contact with does something creepy like beg you to come outside at night, or call your name repeatedly without answering you, it is not your friend. A dog called Axis. One day a single father took his daughter Vanessa to the park to play. His daughter loved to play at the park, every chance she got she would spend it playing at the park. Today was just like any other, or so they thought. Vanessa played on the swing set, one of her favorite things to do at the park. She swung so high for so long, she was laughing like she just found $1 million. Vanessa's father was sitting on a bench, reading a book. He zoned out for a bit, but when he noticed that he couldn't hear Vanessa anymore, he looked up. Vanessa was gone. He sat up immediately and looked around. He started looking around, searching madly for Vanessa, but he couldn't find her. Suddenly he heard a familiar sounding voice. "Hey Daddy, I found a dog." Vanessa squealed. The man breathed a sigh of relief and followed the voice. Vanessa was on the other side of the playground, that's why he couldn't see her before. She was petting a large husky, the largest he's ever seen before. "Daddy, he's friendly," Vanessa said. The husky licked her head while she giggled. "He has a name tag, AXIS, Axis. His name is Axis. He could be someone else's dog, honey," the dad said. "Can we keep him, please?" Vanessa asked. "I don't think so, sweetie." Suddenly, the dog lunged at Vanessa, biting her windpipe. Vanessa screamed as Axis tore her neck apart. Blood rushed from her body like a garden hose, pieces of her neck stained the sidewalk. Axis let go of her, only to look at the dad. "Sorry Charlie, but the little brat had to go. It's better this way." Axis spoke in a mocking tone. "We'll meet again, I'm looking forward to it." Axis ran off. The dad ran over to Vanessa and held her. She was already dead. He cried like he never cried before, his only daughter was dead. In the distance, he can still see Axis, mocking him. Devil baby, I'm one of those people that can feel pain in dreams. It sucks because when you try to lucid dream it's hard, but anyway, my story started out in a dream. I was 13 when this happened. I was dreaming about hanging out with friends, then for no reason at all I feel a horrible pain come from my right arm. The pain felt like something that had a fight grip and wouldn't go away. That's when I woke up with my arm hurting. I didn't think much about it, so I tried to close my eyes, but before I did, my eyes was a dark shadowy figure. It was about 2 feet tall. I couldn't make out a face, but then the body slowly starts to look like a body of thorns. Then the face comes in and the eyes were a bright white, but the eyes didn't glow, and this is the thing that scared me the most. Teeth were razor sharp. They looked like shark teeth. I could clearly see what it was. It was a baby. The skin was made up with thorns, bright eyes and razor-sharp teeth. I made sure I was awake. I hit my cheek until I could taste the blood. I moved my toes and fingers very slowly since the baby was looking at me smiling and I could move. So now that I know I was awake, I was scared. I believe in God and everything, so I sat there and looked at it, praying that I would be keeper safe. That's when it starts to rise and I can clearly see it was a baby and the thing could move at an alarming way. Too fast for a baby to move. It went to the head of my bed. I didn't know if it was going to jump into my bed or just hide, but no, this devil baby thing looked at me and turned into a shadow figure and disappeared. I have never told my parents because I was too scared to tell them, and who would believe that? That experience still shakes me to this day now of how it smiled and disappeared. My experience living in a haunted house now, where I'm not sure if the house is necessarily haunted. Some creepy shit went down whilst me and my parents lived there. I believe I was around 6, so my memory is a little hazy, but I asked my parents about it and they confirmed what I remember. Now, this house was a small cottage, in a village, in England. It was decently secluded except a few other houses and was quite small because it was the first house my parents had bought together. First of all, it was filled to the brim with massive spiders, and according to my mom, they would often wake up with a few on their bed. There was also the phenomenon of hearing constant heavy fast footsteps in my little bedroom and the living room. My mom told me that I would often scream at the top of my lungs, pointing to the corner of my room, though I can't remember what I saw there. Arguably the strangest event that happened in that house was when me, my mom and my dad went out for lunch. We were gone for about 2 hours, and when we got back we found that some of our light bulbs had been taken out of the ceiling lights, and we found them, upright, lining the stairs up to our bedrooms. That house is also where I got my obsession with weird core images, since I would always dream of those types of places.